The transport shuttle touched down at Seoul Spaceport with a soft hiss of cooling engines. Nari pressed her face against the small window and looked at the familiar city skyline. 3 years had passed since she last saw those buildings. 3 years that felt like a lifetime. She stood up slowly, her black military boots making no sound on the metal floor. The other passengers were already gathering their bags and talking excitedly about being home. Nari picked up her single duffel bag and waited. She had learned patience in places where impatience meant death. The shuttle door opened with a mechanical whir. Cool earth air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and car exhaust. Nari breathed deeply. After years of recycled ship air, even the pollution smelled like home. She walked down the ramp with careful steps. Her dark eyes moved constantly, checking corners and exits. Old habits were hard to break. The spaceport was busy with travelers and families reuniting. Children ran past her, laughing and playing. Once, she might have smiled at the sight. Now she just made sure they were not running toward danger, a small metal weight pressed against her chest. The Galactic Defense Corps' medal hung beneath her uniform shirt, invisible to everyone around her. The highest honor humanity could give. She had earned it in the cold darkness between stars, fighting enemies that most people did not even know existed. But here on Earth, she was just another girl coming home. Nari took a bus to her old neighborhood. The buildings looked smaller than she remembered. Everything seemed fragile now, like it could break if someone hit it too hard. She knew how easily walls could crack under weapons fire. She knew how quickly peaceful places could become battlefields. Her apartment was exactly as she had left it. Her mother had kept everything clean and waiting. Family photos sat on the desk next to school books she would never need again. Math problems that seemed important 3 years ago now looked like children's games. She unpacked her few belongings. Combat gear went into the back of her closet, hidden behind old clothes. Her plasma rifle certificate went into a drawer with her childhood diary. 2 worlds that should never meet. The next morning, Nari put on civilian clothes for the first time in years. Jeans felt strange after military uniforms. The fabric was too soft, too loose. She missed the secure feeling of armor plating. Seoul High School looked the same as when she left. Red brick buildings surrounded by trees that were now taller than before. Students walked in groups, talking and laughing about things that seemed impossibly simple. Tests and crushes and weekend plans. Nari walked through the front gate and felt like an alien visiting Earth for the first time. The main office was busy with morning activity. Principal Choi looked up from his papers when she entered. He was older now, with more gray in his hair. "Nari," he said with surprise. "Welcome back. We were not sure when you would return from your family emergency." Family emergency. That was the cover story. Her real family had been a squad of soldiers from 12 different worlds, and most of them were dead now. "Thank you, sir," she said. "I am ready to finish my education." Principal Choi studied her with curious eyes. "You look different, more mature." That must have been quite an experience, if only he knew. 3 years of interstellar war. Leading troops into battle at age 17. Watching friends die in the vacuum of space. Learning to kill enemies who wanted to wipe out humanity. It was educational, she said. The principal handed her a new schedule and a locker combination. "Your old classmates will be happy to see you." "You were missed." Nari doubted that. She had not been particularly popular before leaving. Just another quiet student who kept to herself. She wondered if anyone had even noticed she was gone. Her first class was history. She sat in the back corner where she could see all the exits and keep her back to the wall. The teacher, Miss Han, was discussing ancient battles. The tactics were primitive but interesting. Nari found herself mentally correcting the historical accounts based on her own combat experience. The Roman legions used shield formations to protect against arrow attacks. Miss Han explained. I thought about energy shields and plasma cannons. Ancient history indeed. During the break, a few classmates approached her. Park Min-ho looked same, maybe a little taller. His hair was different, but his smile was familiar. "Nari, you are back," he said. "Where have you been? Nobody would tell us anything." Family business, she replied. The lie came easily now. You look different, said Kim Yuna, studying her with sharp eyes. Stronger somehow, and you sit differently. Nari realized she was holding herself like a soldier at rest. Straight back, hands ready to move quickly. She tried to relax, but it felt wrong. Just grew up a little, she said, till the lunch bell rang with a sharp electronic sound. Nari hit the floor before she realized what she was doing. 20 pairs of eyes stared at her as she got up, brushing dust from her clothes. Sorry, she mumbled. Thought I'd dropped something, but she had not dropped anything. She had reacted to a bell like it was incoming artillery. The sound had triggered combat reflexes trained into her bones. Kim Yuna whispered something to Park Minho. They both looked at her with new curiosity. The rest of the day passed slowly. In math class, the problems were simple. She had calculated missile trajectories and hyperspace jumps. Basic algebra was like breathing. In physical education, she held back her enhanced reflexes and pretended to be as slow as everyone else. After school, Nari walked home through streets that felt like a museum. Everything was so peaceful, so normal. People worried about small things. Traffic jams and grocery shopping and whether it might rain. She passed a newsstand and saw headlines about government budget discussions and celebrity scandals. Nothing about the war that had nearly destroyed human civilization. Nothing about the soldiers who had died to keep these people safe. That night she lay in her childhood bed and stared at the ceiling. Through her window she could see stars. Some of those distant lights shone on worlds she had visited, worlds she had fought to protect. Her classmates saw a girl who had disappeared for 3 years and come back quiet and strange. They did not see the soldier who had held the line when humanity faced extinction. They did not see the leader who had brought her people home alive from impossible battles. Maybe that was better. Maybe it was easier to be just another weird girl than to be the hero who could never talk about what she had done. But as she drifted off to sleep, Nari wondered if she would ever truly be home again. The girl who had left 3 years ago was gone forever. In her place was someone who had seen too much and done too much to ever be normal again. Tomorrow, she would try again to be just another student. But tonight, she dreamed of distant stars and fallen friends and woke with tears on her cheeks that she could never explain. Nari's second week at school started with a fire drill. The alarm screamed through the hallways at exactly 10:15 in the morning. Students around her groaned and complained as they slowly gathered their books. This is so annoying, muttered Park Minho, shoving papers into his bag, but Nari was already moving. Her body had reacted before her mind caught up. In 3 quick steps, she was at the classroom door, checking the hallway for smoke and obstacles. Her trained eyes scanned for the fastest exit route. Everyone stay calm, she called out in a voice that carried authority. Exit through the south stairwell. It has the clearest path to the assembly point. The other students stopped what they were doing and stared at her. Miss Hun looked confused. Nari, this is just a drill, the teacher said. We follow the normal procedure. But Nari was already organizing the evacuation. Yuna helped Ji-won with her crutches. Minho, check the back row for anyone left behind. Move quickly but do not run. Her classmates found themselves following her orders without thinking. There was something in her voice that made them listen. Something that said she knew what she was doing. They reached the courtyard in record time. Other classes were still filing out of the building when Nari's group was already assembled and accounted for. She had automatically done a head count, checking each face against her mental roster. That was efficient, said Principal Choi, approaching their group. Good leadership, Ms. Lee. Nari realized what she had done. She had taken command like she was still leading soldiers into battle. Her classmates were looking at her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. I just wanted everyone to be safe, she said quietly. During lunch the questions started. How did you know which exit was best? Asked Kim Yuna, sitting across from her in the cafeteria. Lucky guess, Nari replied, picking at her rice. And where did you learn to organize people like that? Park Minho joined the conversation. You sounded like a military officer or something. Nari's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. I watch a lot of action movies. It was a weak excuse and everyone knew it. But she could not tell them the truth. She could not explain that she had evacuated real buildings under real fire, that she had led retreats through enemy territory with wounded soldiers depending on her decisions. The conversation moved to other topics, but Nari noticed how her classmates kept glancing at her. She was becoming interesting to them, and that was dangerous. In physical education class, Coach Park lined them up for relay races. Nari tried to hold back to run at normal speed. But when Song Hannah stumbled during her turn, Nari's enhanced reflexes kicked in. She moved like lightning, catching Hannah before she hit the ground. The movement was so fast and smooth that several students gasped. One moment Hannah was falling, the next she was upright and safe in Nari's steady grip. "Wow," breathed Kang Soo-ho, the student council president. "That was amazing. Are you a dancer or something?" "Just lucky timing," Nari said, helping Hannah steady herself. But she knew how it looked. Normal people did not move like that. Normal teenagers did not have reflexes honed by zero-gravity combat training. She was standing out when she needed to blend in. After school, Kang Soo-ho caught up with her at the bus stop. "Hey, Nari," he said, slightly out of breath from running. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded, though every instinct told her to be careful. "You are different from how I remember," he said. "Before you left, you were quiet, shy, but now you seem so confident. So aware of everything around you." It was true. The old Nari had been invisible, afraid to speak up in class. The new Nari had commanded starship bridge crews and made split-second decisions that saved lives. It was hard to pretend to be small when you had learned to be strong. "People change," she said, "but how much can someone change in 3 years?" Soo-ho asked. "And what kind of family emergency teaches you to move like that, to lead people like that?" Nari felt trapped. She liked Soo-ho, he was kind and genuine. But she could not tell him that her family emergency had been humanity's first interstellar war, that she had spent 3 years fighting aliens in the darkness between stars. "I cannot talk about it," she said. "I am sorry." That evening, Nari sat in her room and watched the news. The reporter was discussing trade agreements and economic policies. Nothing about the Corvani Empire that had nearly wiped out human civilization. Nothing about the desperate battles fought in distant solar systems. It was like the war had never happened. The government had classified everything. The soldiers who had saved humanity were invisible heroes, unable to share their stories or receive public recognition. Nari's medal lay hidden in her drawer, worth less than the plastic trophies her classmates won at school competitions. Those trophies could be displayed proudly. Her medal had to stay secret forever. The next day brought chemistry class with Mr. Kim. They were working with basic compounds, learning reactions that Nari had used to make explosives in the field. She tried to act interested as he explained concepts she had mastered years ago. "Nari," Mr. Kim called. "Can you tell us what happens when these two chemicals combine?" She could have explained the molecular structure, the energy release patterns, and 3 different ways to weaponize the reaction. Instead, she gave the textbook answer. "They create heat and gas," she said. "Correct, but can you be more specific?" "About the process?" Nari hesitated. The real answer involved knowledge she should not have. "I am not sure about the details." Lim Ji-won, her lab partner, looked surprised. "But you seem to know so much about science. The way you handle equipment, the safety precautions you take. It is like you have done this before." Another close call. Nari was trying to hide her abilities, but they kept showing through. Years of advanced training could not be easily concealed. During art class, they were drawing portraits. Nari found herself sketching faces she remembered from the war. Comrades who had died in battles that officially never happened. Friends whose names were classified secrets. "That is really good," said Yoon Tae-yeon, looking over her shoulder. "But who is it?" He looked sad. Nari stared at the drawing of Lieutenant Chun, who had saved her life on Europa before taking a plasma blast meant for her. His sacrifice was recorded only in classified files and her nightmares. "Just someone I used to know," she said, closing the sketchbook. The weeks passed slowly. Each day brought new challenges as Nari tried to fit into a world that felt increasingly foreign. Her classmates discussed their problems with tests and relationships, while she struggled with memories of battles and losses they could never understand. She found herself becoming more isolated, not because she wanted to be alone, but because every conversation was a minefield of secrets she could not share. Every friendship was built on lies about who she really was. At night, she would lie awake and wonder if this was what victory felt like. Humanity was safe, but the price was a lifetime of silence. She had saved civilization, but she could never be part of it again. The hero had come home, but home no longer had a place for who she had become. The chemistry lab was quiet except for the soft bubbling of experiments. Nari worked alongside Len Jiwan, measuring chemicals with the precise movements she had learned in military labs. Around them, other students chatted while they worked on their assignments. "This is boring," complained Park Min-ho from the next table. "When will we ever use this in real life?" Nari almost smiled. She had used chemistry to save her life more times than she could count. Improvised explosives, emergency. Medical compounds, atmosphere processors on damaged ships. But she said nothing. "Be careful with that beaker," she told Jiwon quietly. "The mixture is unstable when heated too quickly." Jiwon looked surprised. "How do you know that?" "We have not learned about temperature reactions yet." Before Nari could answer, something went wrong at Minho's table. He had mixed the wrong chemicals in the wrong amounts. The reaction was happening too fast. "Get back!" Nari shouted, pushing Jiwon behind the lab bench. The beaker exploded with a bright flash and a loud bang. Smoke filled the air. Students screamed and ran toward the exits. But Nari was already moving with trained purpose. "Stay low," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. "The smoke will rise. Cover your faces and move to the ventilation area." She grabbed the emergency kit from the wall and checked Minho for injuries. His face was red from the heat, but he was not seriously hurt. Around them, students cowered in fear while Nari worked with calm efficiency. "Jiwon, activate the emergency ventilation system, that panel by the door. Yuna, help me check the others for chemical burns." Her classmates followed her orders without question. There was something in her voice that demanded obedience. Something that said she had handled worse situations than this. Mr. Kim burst through the door, took one look at the organized evacuation, and stared at Nari in amazement. "How did you know what to do?" he asked. Nari realized she had done it again. She had taken command like she was still on a starship bridge during an emergency. Her knowledge of chemical accidents came from real experience with damaged ship systems and hostile environments. "I read a lot," she said weakly, but everyone was looking at her now with new eyes. The way she had moved, the commands she had given, the equipment she had used. It was not the behavior of a normal high school student. Later that day, Yoon Tae-yun cornered her in the library. "That was not normal," he said, sitting across from her at a quiet table. "What you did in the lab, the fire drill last week. You act like you have real training." Nari kept her eyes on her textbook. "I just stayed calm." "No," Tae-yun insisted. "You gave orders like a professional. You knew exactly what to do." "My father is a firefighter, and even he was impressed when I told him about it." The weight of keeping secrets was getting heavier every day. Nari wanted to tell someone the truth, but the truth was classified at the highest levels. She could go to prison for revealing what she had done during the war. That night, she lay in bed and let her mind drift back to the memories she tried so hard to forget. 3 years ago, she had been sitting in this same room when the men in black suits came to her door. They said she had scored the highest marks ever recorded on the military aptitude test. They said humanity needed her. She was 16 years old. The Corvani Empire had discovered Earth's location. Their invasion fleet was already moving through hyperspace. Humanity had 6 months to prepare for a war they could not win with conventional forces, but humans had one advantage. They were good at thinking in ways that surprised their enemies. They were good at finding solutions when there seemed to be no hope. I remembered the training facility on Luna Base. hundreds of young people from around the world, all chosen for their unusual minds and quick reflexes. They learned to fight in zero gravity. They learned to command starships. They learned to kill aliens who wanted to wipe out their species. At 17, she had been given command of Soul Squad, 12 soldiers from different countries, thrown together and told to hold the line while Earth evacuated its most important people. The Corvani were reptilian creatures, twice as tall as humans and 3 times as strong. Their technology was more advanced. Their ships were faster and better armed. By every logical measure, humans should have lost the war in the first week, but humans did not fight logically. They fought with desperate creativity, Nari remembered. The Battle of Proxima Station. The Corvani had surrounded the human fleet. Escape was impossible. Surrender meant the extinction of the human race. So instead of running or surrendering, Nari had done something no Corvani commander expected. She had ordered her squad to ram their damaged ship directly into the enemy flagship. The collision had crippled the Corvani command structure and allowed the human fleet to break through their lines. It should have killed everyone on Nari's ship, but she had calculated the impact angle perfectly. Using the enemy ship's own shields to cushion the blow, 7 members of Soul Squad had died in that battle. The survivors, including Nari, had managed to capture the enemy ship and turn its weapons against the Corvani fleet. The victory at Proxima had changed the course of the war. Suddenly, the invincible aliens were running from human forces. Fear spread through their empire as news of the impossible human tactics reached their home worlds. But victory came with a price. The soldiers who had saved humanity could never be acknowledged. The war itself was classified. Too many people would panic if they knew how close extinction had come. Nari had returned to Earth as a hero with no parade, no recognition, no way to share the burden of what she had experienced. The next morning at school, she tried again to be normal. But during literature class, Ms. Park asked them to write about a meaningful experience from their lives. Nari stared at the blank paper. How could she write about meaningful experiences when the most meaningful ones were state secrets? How could she explain that she had held the hand of her best friend as he died in the cold vacuum of space? That she had made decisions that saved millions of lives? Instead, she wrote about learning to ride a bicycle when she was 8 years old. During lunch, Kang Suho approached her table again. "Can I sit with you?" he asked. She nodded, though she preferred to eat alone. Being around people meant more chances to slip up and reveal something she should not. "You know," Suho said, opening his lunchbox, "there are rumors about you." Nari's stomach tightened. "What kind of rumors?" "Some people think you were in some kind of special program, like a military academy or something. The way you move, the way you take charge in emergencies, it is not normal for someone our age." "People like to gossip," Nari said. "Maybe," Suho agreed. "But I have been thinking. 3 years is a long time to be away. And you came back so different, so much stronger and more confident. What if the family emergency was not what you said it was?" Nari met his eyes. There was genuine curiosity there, and something else, respect. He was not trying to cause trouble. He was trying to understand. "Some things are too difficult to talk about," she said quietly. Suho nodded slowly. "I understand. But if you ever want to talk to someone, I am a good listener. Sometimes it helps to share difficult things with a friend." A friend. The word felt strange. Nari had not had a real friend since the war ended. Her squad mates had been more than friends. They had been family. But they were scattered across the galaxy now, each carrying their own secrets. Maybe it would be nice to have someone who cared, even if she could never tell them the whole truth. "Thank you," she said. "Maybe someday." But deep down she knew that someday would never come. The girl who had led soldiers into battle against alien invaders could never truly be friends with teenagers who worried about homework and dating. The war had ended. But for Nari, it would never really be over. The school festival was supposed to be the highlight of the semester. Colorful banners hung between the buildings, and students had set up booths selling food and games. The cheerful atmosphere reminded Nari of the colony festival she had protected. During the war, before she knew how quickly celebration could turn to terror, she was helping Xiaoyang arrange flowers at the garden club booth when the first explosion shook the ground. Students looked around in confusion. Some laughed, thinking it was part of the festival activities. But Nari knew the sound of plasma grenades. Her blood turned cold. "Everyone get down!" she shouted, but her voice was lost in the noise of the crowd. The second explosion was closer. Windows shattered in the main building. Now people were screaming and running in all directions. But they were running the wrong way, toward the parking lot where more explosions were coming from. Nari grabbed Xiaoyang by the shoulders. "Listen to me carefully. Take everyone you can find and go to the gymnasium. Lock the doors and stay away. From windows, do not come out until I tell you it is safe." "But Nari, what is happening?" Xiaoyang's eyes were wide with fear. "Just do what I said, please." Nari pushed through the panicking crowd, moving against the flow of people trying to escape. Her trained eyes scanned the area for threats. What she saw made her heart stop. 3 figures in dark armor were moving through the festival grounds. With military precision, they were tall and moved in ways that human bodies could not. Even in disguise, she recognized the distinctive gait of Corvani soldiers, sleeper agents, hidden on Earth since the war ended, waiting for orders to strike. One of them spotted a group of students trying to hide behind a food booth. It raised a weapon that glowed with deadly energy. Nari was moving before she realized it. She tackled Kim Dong-yoon just as the plasma bolt scorched the air where his head had been. They rolled behind concrete steps as more shots flew overhead. "Stay down," she told him. "Do not move until I come back." "Nari, where are you going?" Dong-yoon grabbed her arm. "We should run. Running will get more people killed." She broke free from his grip and sprinted toward the nearest building. In the janitor's closet, she found what she needed. A mop handle became a weapon. Cleaning chemicals became improvised explosives. In 60 seconds, she had armed herself with items the Corvani would never expect. The first alien soldier was advancing. On the gymnasium where students had gathered, Nari came at it from behind, moving with the silent grace she had learned in zero-gravity combat. The mop handle struck pressure points in its armor joints, dropping the creature before it could raise its weapon. She grabbed its plasma rifle and checked the power cell. Half charged. Enough for what she needed to do. The second Corvani was in the courtyard, herding students like cattle. It spoke in their harsh language, demanding to know where the war criminal was hidden. They were looking for her. Nari stepped into the open, the alien weapon steady in her hands. "I am here," she called out in perfect Corvani. "Let the civilians go." The creature spun toward her, surprise evident even through its helmet. "You speak our tongue, human child?" "I learned it from your friends before I killed them," Nari replied in the same language. "Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." The alien laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You are the one they call Soul Squad Leader, the Butcher of Proxima Station. We have searched for you." Around the courtyard, students watched in stunned silence as their quiet classmate faced down an armored monster twice her size. They could not understand the alien words, but they could see the deadly intent in both fighters. "Why are you here?" Nari demanded. "The war is over." "The war is never over," the Corvani snarled. "Not while humans live, not while you live." It lunged forward with inhuman speed, but Nari was faster. 3 years of normal life had not dulled her reflexes. She rolled aside, came up firing, and put 2 plasma bolt center mass into the creature's chest armor. The third alien appeared from behind the science building, moving to flank her, but Nari had expected this. She had been counting opponents since the attack began, tracking their positions like pieces on a chessboard. She threw her improvised explosive device with perfect accuracy. The chemical mixture erupted in a cloud of caustic smoke, burning through the creature's armor and forcing it to retreat. "On Tae-yun," she shouted to a student cowering nearby. "In my backpack, emergency communicator. Call this frequency." She rattled off a series of numbers from memory. Tae-yun fumbled with the device, his hands shaking. The small screen lit up with military symbols that meant nothing to him but everything to Nari. Cerberus Base, this is Sol 1, she spoke into. The communicator while keeping her weapon trained on the wounded alien. Code Black situation at Seoul High School. 3 Corvani infiltrators, requesting immediate cleanup crew. The response was instant. Seoul 1, this is Control. Cleanup en route, status report. 2 hostiles neutralized, 1 contained. Civilian casualties minimal, cover story will be needed. Understood, maintain position. By the time the unmarked vehicles arrived 10 minutes later, Nari had secured the scene and organized the students into groups for questioning. The surviving Corvani was unconscious, bound with electrical cables from the physics lab. Men in black suits took control of the situation with practiced efficiency. Students were separated and interviewed. Memory modification devices were prepared for those who had seen too much, but some things could not be hidden. Too many people had witnessed Nari's impossible skills. Kim Dong-yoon had recorded video on his phone before the agents could stop him. Oh, Seo-young had seen her friend speak fluent alien language and fight like a trained soldier. Principal Choi approached her as the cleanup crew loaded the aliens into armored trucks. Miss Lee, he said quietly, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about your family emergency. Nari looked around at her classmates. Some stared at her with fear, others with awe. All of them now knew that she was not the quiet girl they thought they knew. Yes, sir, she said. I think we do. The secret was out. After months of hiding, pretending, and lying, her 2 worlds had finally collided. There was no going back to being normal now. As the last of the alien bodies was carried away, students gathered in small groups and whispered about what they had seen. The weird girl who sat in the back of chemistry class had just saved their lives with skills no teenager should possess. Nari stood alone in the courtyard, still holding the alien weapon, and wondered what would happen next. She had spent so long trying to fit in that she had forgotten something important. Sometimes the world needed heroes more than it needed normal people, and sometimes being normal was not an option. The news broke 3 days after the attack. Not the real story, of course. The official report claimed it was a terrorist incident involving unknown foreign agents. But buried in the classified sections that few people ever saw was a single line about the heroic actions of Sergeant Lee Nari, age 19, recipient of the Terran Cross for Valor. By morning, everything had changed. Nari walked through the school gates to find reporters waiting. Camera crews lined the street. Students who had barely noticed her before now stopped and stared as she passed. The quiet girl from the back row was suddenly the most famous person in school. Miss Lee, called a reporter, pushing a microphone toward her face. Can you tell us about your role in saving Seoul High School? No comment, she said, keeping her head down, but there was no escaping the attention. Her military service record had been partially declassified. The bare facts were public now, even if the details remained secret. Everyone knew she had spent 3 years fighting in humanity's first interstellar war. In homeroom, Mr. Kim read from an official statement. It has come to our attention that student Lee Nari served with distinction in the Galactic Defense Corps during the recent classified conflict. The school administration wants to express our gratitude for her service and her actions during yesterday's emergency. 25 pairs of eyes turned to look at her. Some faces showed admiration. Others showed fear. A few looked hurt, as if she had betrayed them by keeping such a massive secret. Jung Se-woo, who had made fun of her quiet behavior just last week, now could not meet her eyes. During the attack, she had carried him to safety when he froze in. Panic. The boy who had called her weird now knew she was a decorated war veteran. I never complained about homework, he muttered to his friend. She probably thinks we are all babies, but he was wrong. Nari envied them their normal problems. She would have traded every medal and commendation for the chance to worry about test scores and weekend plans. During lunch, the cafeteria fell silent when she entered. Students whispered behind their hands and pointed in her direction. She took her tray to an empty table and sat alone as she had for weeks. But this time, the isolation felt different, heavier. Anjian was the first to approach. The girl who had struggled with group projects all semester now looked embarrassed. "I owe you an apology," she said, sitting across from Nari. "All those times in group work when you took charge and I got annoyed. I thought you were being bossy. I did not know you had actual experience leading people." "You could not have known," Nari replied. "I was not allowed to tell anyone." "But still," Dion continued, "you were trying to help us succeed, and I made it difficult. I am sorry." More students began to join them. Park Minho sat down, followed by Kim Yuna and several others. Soon the table was full of classmates who had spent months treating her like an outsider. "Is it true you commanded a starship?" asked Yuna. "Sometimes," Nari said carefully, "when my captain was injured." "And you really saved 3 colonies?" "My squad saved 3 colonies. I was just the leader." But even her modest answers impressed them. They were beginning to understand that their quiet classmate had been part of something extraordinary. While they were worried about exam grades, she had been making life and death decisions for entire worlds. The attention was overwhelming. During chemistry class, Mr. Kim asked her to demonstrate proper safety procedures. In physical education, Coach Park wanted her to help train the other students. Teachers who had barely noticed her before now called on her constantly. "This is too much," she told Principal Choi during a private meeting in his office. "I just want to finish school." "Normally, I understand," he said. "But normal might not be possible anymore. Would you prefer to transfer to a different school? We could arrange something discreet," the thought tempted her. Starting over somewhere else where no one knew her history. But running away felt like cowardice, and she had never been a coward. "No," she said. "I will stay, but I need help managing this." Principal Choi nodded. "We will arrange counseling sessions. And we can limit media access to school grounds, give things time to settle down." But things did not settle down quickly. Every day brought new challenges as Nari tried to navigate her changed social status. Some students treated her like a celebrity, asking for autographs and wanting to hear war stories she could not tell. Others seemed afraid of her, as if her military training made her dangerous. The worst part was the isolation that came with fame. People wanted to talk to the war hero, but no one wanted to talk to Nari the person. They saw the medals and the classified service record, not the girl who still had nightmares about friends who died in battle. Bae Haijin was different. She had been Nari's lab partner in biology, a quiet girl who rarely spoke up in class. But after the attack, she sought Nari out during breaks. "Everyone is treating you like you are made of glass or metal," Haijin observed. "That must be lonely." It was the first time someone had asked how she felt instead of what she had done. "Very lonely," Nari admitted. "Want to eat lunch together. Tomorrow, I promise not to ask about aliens or spaceships. We can talk about normal things, like how terrible the cafeteria food is." Nari almost smiled. "I would like that." Slowly, a few genuine friendships began to form. Students who looked past the hero worship and saw the person underneath. Kansilho continued to treat her the same as before, with kindness and respect but without awe. Oh, Seoyeon thanked her for the rescue but then moved on to discussing their shared interest in gardening. "The flowers you planted before the attack are blooming beautifully," Seoyeon said. "Would you like to help me plan the spring garden?" These small moments of normalcy meant more to Nari than any military decoration. They reminded her that she was still human, still a teenager trying to figure out her place in the world, but the questions never stopped completely. During history class, when they studied ancient warfare, students looked to her for expert commentary. In science class, her knowledge of advanced technology made simple experiments seem trivial. "How do you know so much about propulsion systems?" asked the physics teacher. "I had to learn emergency repairs on starships," she answered honestly. The teacher nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps you could give a presentation about practical applications of physics in space travel." And so gradually, Nari found herself becoming a bridge between the world of normal teenagers and the classified realm of interstellar conflict. She could not share the details of her service, but she could help her classmates understand that heroes were not mythical figures. They were ordinary people who did extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. The hardest part was learning to accept their admiration without feeling guilty about the friends who would never receive recognition for their sacrifices. Every compliment reminded her of soldiers whose names would never be known outside classified files. But slowly, she began to realize that carrying their memory was part of her responsibility as a survivor. She could not bring them back, but she could honor them by living a life worthy of their sacrifice, and maybe, just maybe, she could learn to be both the hero they needed and the normal girl she wanted to be. 2 months after the attack, Nari stood before the school board with a proposal that surprised everyone. "I want to start a security and safety club," she said, holding a folder of carefully prepared documents. "Students should know how to respond to emergencies. Not just fire drills, but real situations where quick thinking can save lives." Principal Choi looked interested. What would this club teach exactly? Basic first aid, emergency evacuation procedures, how to stay calm under pressure, how to help others when things go wrong. She paused. Things I learned the hard way, but in a safe environment. The board approved her proposal unanimously. Within a week, 30 students had signed up. The first meeting was held in the gymnasium after school. "This is not about fighting," Nari explained to the gathered students. "This is about helping. About being prepared, about looking out for each other." She started with simple exercises. How to check if someone was injured, how to move safely through a building filled with smoke, how to organize people during a crisis without causing panic. Hong Jin-soo, who had been terrified during the alien attack, slowly gained confidence as he learned basic rescue techniques. Lee Minju discovered she had a talent for keeping people calm under stress. Even Young Si-woo, who had initially joined out of curiosity, became one of the most dedicated members. "Why are you teaching us this?" asked Kim Dong-yoon during their third meeting. Nari thought about the question carefully. "Because no one taught me when I needed to know. I had to learn while people were depending on me to save them. You should have the chance to learn when it is safe." The club became popular quickly. Students who had never spoken to each other before worked together on rescue scenarios. Shy kids found their voices when practicing emergency communication. Athletes learned that real strength came from helping others, not just winning competitions, but the club also served another purpose for Nari. It gave her a way to process her own experiences without breaking security protocols. Every technique she taught was something she had used in real combat situations. Every scenario they practiced was based on actual emergencies she had faced. Teaching them helped her heal. 3 months into the semester, the first real test came. Hong Jin-soo was walking past the old storage building when he heard a muffled cry for help. Inside, he found a first-year student trapped under a collapsed shelf. Conscious but unable to move. Instead of panicking, Jin-soo remembered his training. He called for help, checked the student for serious injuries, and carefully moved debris while keeping the trapped boy calm and still. By the time teachers arrived, he had already stabilized the situation. "You probably saved his back from permanent damage," the paramedic told him. "Good work." Word of the rescue spread quickly. The security club members felt proud of their training. But more importantly, the rest of the school began to see them differently. They were not just followers of the famous war hero. They were capable people in their own right. Nari watched from the sidelines as Jin-soo received praise for his quick thinking, and she felt something she had not experienced in years: pure happiness without guilt. She had taught him those skills, but he was the one who had used them to help someone. He was the hero of his own story. As winter approached, the dynamics in school continued to evolve. Students no longer whispered about Nari in the hallways. She had become part of their daily reality. The war hero who helped with homework, the decorated soldier who complained about cafeteria food, the squad leader who laughed at jokes during lunch. "You know what I realized?" said Bae Hai-jin one afternoon as they walked home together. "You are not that different from the rest of us. You just had different experiences." How do you figure that? Nari asked. Well, you worry about tests. You get annoyed when people are loud during movies. You like the same music we do. You just happen to also know how to fly spaceships and fight aliens. It was a simple observation, but it meant everything to Nari. For months, she had felt like she was pretending to be normal. Now she was beginning to understand that she did not have to choose between being a soldier and being a teenager. She could be both. The revelation came during the winter festival. The school was decorated with lights and snow sculptures. Students performed in concerts and plays. It was everything the interrupted fall festival should have been. Nari was helping set up chairs for the evening performance when a small crisis occurred. The sound system failed, threatening to ruin the choir concert that parents had come to see. I can fix it, offered Park Min-ho, but after 20 minutes of trying, he gave up. I do not understand these connections. Without thinking, Nari knelt beside the equipment. Her hands moved with practiced skill, tracing wiring and checking power flows. In 5 minutes, she had identified and repaired the problem. How did you know how to do that? Asked the music teacher. Communication systems on starships, Nari replied. Similar principles? But this time, no one stared at her like she was strange. They just thanked her and moved on with the preparations. Her unusual knowledge had become useful rather than alienating. During the concert, Nari sat with her friends and listened to the choir sing traditional songs. The music was beautiful, but what moved her most was the ordinariness of the moment. Students performing for proud parents, teachers smiling at their success, families spending time together. This was what she had fought to protect. Not grand concepts like freedom or democracy, but simple human moments like these. The right of people to gather and sing together without fear. After the concert, as students cleaned up the auditorium, Yoon Tae-yeon approached her with a question. Do you ever regret it? He asked, missing out on normal teenage years to fight. In a war? Nari considered the question seriously. She had missed proms and graduation parties. She had never experienced the carefree innocence her classmates took for granted. She had seen and done things that would haunt her forever. I regret the friends I lost, she said finally. I regret that the war happened at all, but I do not regret serving. Someone had to stand between Earth and the aliens who wanted to destroy it. I am glad it was people like me instead of people like you. People like me. People who deserve to stay innocent. Who should be able to worry about normal things without having nightmares about battles in space. Tae-yeon nodded slowly. Thank you for keeping us safe enough to be normal. As the evening ended and students began to leave, Nari stood in the empty auditorium and looked up at the ceiling. Through the skylights, she could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Some of those stars shone on worlds she had visited. Worlds where humans now lived in peace because of what she and her squad had done. Children on those worlds would grow up free because teenage soldiers from Earth had been willing to fight for them. But tonight, she was not thinking about distant worlds or past battles. She was thinking about tomorrow's chemistry test and whether she should ask Kang Soo-ho to the spring dance. Normal teenage concerns that felt extraordinary because she had earned the right to have them. The war hero had finally come home. Not to a parade or a ceremony, but to a place where she belonged, where she could be both the soldier who had saved humanity and the girl who still had homework to finish, standing under the stars she had once fought to protect. Nari smiled and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help her classmates, and new chances to build the normal life she had fought so hard to make possible. She was no longer the weird girl who sat in the back of class. She was no longer just the war hero who could not talk about her past. She was Lee Nari, student and soldier, protector and friend, hero and human. And for the first time since coming home, that felt like enough.